Moulton exposes Hegseth with one question so simple, so direct, and so devastating that the entire hearing room froze before anyone realized what had just happened. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It was the kind of quiet political detonation that starts with a single spark and ends with a full-blown credibility meltdown. And if you missed the opening 30 seconds of this exchange, you missed the exact moment everything changed. Because what set this entire confrontation on fire was not some complicated policy or classified technical detail. It was a basic yes or no question about where a launch time came from, and the official sitting under oath could not answer it. That's when people watching leaned in. That's when staffers shifted in their seats.
Central Command.
Well, in this committee, no way in which I communicate or what I communicate on a successful strike is something that I would share.
So you can't even identify the combatant command under which this operation occurred?
Well, everybody knows the combatant.
Okay, so everyone knows it's Central Command. So when Central Command sent you this information, did they send it on a classified system or an unclassified system?
Well, as you know, having served yourself, any way that the Secretary of Defense communicates or provides information in and of itself is classified and not to be discussed.
So what was the classification marking of the launch time when it was sent to you? Because DoD regulations require information on classified systems to be marked.
What was the classification mark time?
Yeah, what was the classification marking? Because
again, classifications of any information in an ongoing operation that was successful are not things that would be disclosed in a public forum.
You can very well disclose whether or not it was classified. It's not classified to disclose whether or not it was classified. And in fact, DoD regulations state that any classified information has to be labeled with its classification. Was it classified secret or top secret?
What's not classified is that it was an incredibly successful mission against the Houthis.
Okay, so it was classified. So are you trying to say that the information was unclassified?
I'm not
okay,
trying to say
that's what
anything.
I thought. You're not saying that. So you took classified information from Central Command that had a classification marking on it, because that's what's required by DoD regulations, and you put it on an unclassified system. So we're going to get a report in a few days from the DoD Inspector General. And if the DoD Inspector General finds what is pretty obvious, both to you smiling there in the witness seat and to all of us up here, that the information was, in fact, classified, do you plan to take any accountability for that?
As I pointed out at the time...
you said that accountability is back. Does that not apply to you?
As I said at the time, Congressman, there were no names, targets, locations, units, routes, sources, methods, no classified information.
Okay, so if it comes back that it is classified, will you take accountability or not? You've already admitted that it was classified because everything you get from CENTCOM is classified. You just explained that to me. That's how you justified not answering the question.
Not what I said. I didn't confirm any classification or
okay, so if it is
what
confirmed,
I know is that
will you take
everything
accountability?
I share, everything I talk about,
Mr. Secretary, does accountability apply to you or not?
Is classified whether I talk or not.
Does it apply to you or not?
Does what apply to me?
Accountability. You said accountability is back at the Secretary.
And you know what? The Houthis were held accountable for shooting at our ships.
I'm just asking if it applies to you.
Very successfully.
I'm not asking about the Houthis.
The previous administration let our ships get shot at, and nothing was done about it. And thankfully, because of the skill and courage of our troops on the battlefield,
I'm just asking about
we actually put them in a place where they called for a ceasefire.
I reclaim my time. I'm just asking if accountability applies to you. It's a very simple question. We use leadership by example.
Of course. Unlike, I serve at the pleasure of the president like everybody else does.
So it only applies to the president, not to you?
I serve at the pleasure.
You talked about the success of the Houthi operation. About how much money did it cost? How much money did you spend on missiles shooting at the Houthis?
Well, you'd have to compare that with what it cost.
I'm just asking how much did it cost?
Divert our shipping lanes around.
I'm told it's several $100 million, maybe close to $1 billion. How many U.S. flagged commercial ships have transited the Red Sea since your so-called successful operation?
Well, thankfully, unlike the previous administration,
the answer is zero.
Military vessels transit.
No, I didn't ask about military vessels. I asked
which would
about
be the
commercial
precursor
vessels.
for
how many commercial vessels?
Transit,
it's been several weeks. How many commercial vessels, U.S. flagged, have transited
the
the Red
Sea? Well, would you, Mr. Congressman, put civilian ships
the
through
questions
the
are not to me,
military
Mr. Secretary.
ships?
They're to you.
We have responsibly put military
the answer
ships
is zero.
First.
I reclaim my time. How many generals and admirals have you fired?
I don't know the exact number. But
you don't know the number. It's 8. Can you explain why any of them were fired? Like, just explain why was the Army JAG fired? Why did you fire him?
They all serve at the pleasure of the president. And I think
No, I'm just asking you why.
General Kane is a great example.
I'm just asking
of a
you
leader
why.
that we
And
need
you
at
probably
this
learned
time.
at Princeton what why means. Why did you fire him?
They serve at the pleasure of the president, and we
Why
want better
did you
representation
fire
in
him?
each and every of those.
You can't
each and
explain
every
why
one
you
of those
fired any of
places.
them?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Scott.
That's when viewers at home realized something serious was unfolding. Because when someone in power can't answer the simplest question imaginable, you know the rest of the story isn't going to be pretty. And this is where the real unraveling begins. Moulton wasn't swinging wildly, he wasn't shouting, and he wasn't grandstanding. He was dissecting the situation with surgical precision. He asked a question so basic that any clear, truthful answer would have resolved the entire issue in seconds. Did the combat launch time for those F-18s come from Central Command? Yes or no? That's it. Instead, the responses came wrapped in hesitation, vague language, and evasive detours that looked less like explanations and more like attempts to outrun gravity. Every pause created more suspicion. Every deflection created more doubt. What made this moment gripping, what locked people into the screen, was watching someone who should have had every detail ready struggle to form even the beginning of a direct answer. And the more he dodged, the clearer the trap became, because here's the thing. If the launch time did come from Central Command, the rules are simple. It would have been sent through classified systems. And if it came through classified systems, it would have been marked with its classification level, something required by Department of Defense regulations. So all Moulton needed was confirmation of the source. Instead, he got excuses, misdirections, and talking points about mission success, none of which answered the question. That's when the tone shifted from uncomfortable to alarming. Moulton wasn't talking about politics. He wasn't talking about disagreements in strategy. He was talking about one of the oldest, most unforgiving rules in American military culture. Never put classified operational information on an unsecured system. Service members are drilled on this from the moment they put on a uniform. It isn't a suggestion. It isn't optional. It is the backbone of protecting lives and preventing compromised missions. So when an official refuses to say whether he sent classified mission details over an unclassified messaging app, viewers immediately understand the stakes. And Moulton understood them even more. Instead of letting the evasion slide, he pushed further. Calmly. Methodically. Each question narrower, tighter, impossible to dodge without tying yourself into knots. What was the classification marking? Was it labeled secret? Top secret. Every question was straightforward. Every answer was everything but. And with each refusal to answer, the room seemed to lean closer, waiting for the slip everyone knew was coming. Then came the moment that sealed it. Hegseth tried to defend himself by claiming that anything the Secretary of Defense communicates, anything at all, is considered classified in and of itself. He said it as if it ended the conversation. But in reality, it lit the fuse on the biggest contradiction of the hearing. Because if everything he receives or says is classified, then sending any of it through an unclassified signal chat automatically becomes a violation. It's not a loophole. It's not complicated. It's a trap, and he walked into it himself. Moulton caught it instantly, and once he did, the evasions had nowhere left to go. This is where things shifted from defensive to desperate. Instead of clarifying, the official pivoted to success against the Houthi fighters, then to praise for U.S. troops, then to attacks on the previous administration. Anything, absolutely anything, to avoid addressing the classification question. But if you watched carefully, the deflections only made the contradiction clearer. You don't dodge a question that hard unless the answer creates a problem. And that's when Moulton asked the single most brutal line of the exchange. Does accountability apply to you or not? You could feel the air leave the room. Because at this point the question wasn't about one message or one strike. It was about leadership. It was about whether the rules enforced on thousands of service members somehow stop applying when the responsibility moves higher up the chain. And instead of addressing the principle, the official repeated the same evasive phrase again and again. I serve at the pleasure of the president. That's not an explanation. That's an escape hatch. Or at least an attempt at one. But Moulton wasn't finished. He turned to another pressure point, the sudden firing of 8 generals and admirals. No reasons given. No explanations offered. Just removed and dismissed with the same line. They serve at the pleasure of the president. When asked why any of them were fired, The answer was nothing but circular language that revealed absolutely nothing. The refusal to explain fed every concern Moulton was raising. Every missing answer made the story bigger, not smaller. And viewers saw it unfold in real time. They watched as the simplest questions, why? What for? On what grounds? Received no answers at all. Because the moment someone refuses to explain a firing, it raises questions about what's being hidden behind that silence. Then came another hit, the cost of the mission. Reports suggest it may have reached several $100 million, possibly close to $1 billion. Yet, after all that firepower and all that spending, how many U.S.-flagged commercial ships traveled through the Red Sea? 0. Not one. And that grim reality undercut the entire narrative of success that kept being repeated every time the conversation grew uncomfortable. By this point, anyone watching understood what was happening. Moulton wasn't asking trick questions. He wasn't manipulating facts. He was doing what oversight is supposed to do. Forcing government officials to explain their decisions, justify their actions, and stand behind the rules they expect others to follow. The most remarkable part of this entire exchange is just how unavoidable the truth became. Each time the official tried to shift the subject, the dodge only made the original question more important. Each time he repeated a talking point, it exposed the gap between the answers being given and the accountability being avoided. And every moment of hesitation made the situation look less like confusion and more like deliberate evasion. Because oversight isn't about dramatic speeches or political clashes. It's about clarity. It's about asking simple questions that hold people in power to the same standards as everyone else. And Moulton's approach, calm, precise, unrelenting, demonstrated that better than any fiery moment could that be why the time the hearing ended. The audience didn't need a headline to tell them what happened. They saw it. They heard it. They watched a senior official fail to answer the most basic questions about classified information, accountability, and the firing of high-ranking officers. They watched him struggle to maintain consistency in his own explanations. And they watched a member of Congress expose that inconsistency in a way that left no wiggle room, no alternative interpretation, no way to spin the outcome. What this moment revealed was not just a single lapse in judgment or a single questionable decision. It revealed a pattern of evasiveness, of inconsistency, of refusing to take responsibility. Viewers weren't left with a political impression. They were left with a structural one, that leadership without accountability becomes unstable, unpredictable, and dangerous. And that is why this hearing matters, because the strength of any institution, civilian or military, depends on trust, on transparency, on leaders who follow the rules they enforce. When that breaks, everything downstream gets weaker. And moments like this show exactly why oversight isn't optional. It's essential if you want more breakdowns that cut through the noise and show the real story behind these hearings, the power dynamics, the contradictions, the hidden consequences. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, and share it. These deep dives only thrive when informed viewers like you keep them alive.